that Prince Harry did with the BBC on the result of his appeal court case with against Ravik, and it's an explosive interview, and Harry is pointing a finger at his father and the royal household. They're the ones that are preventing him from obtaining the security, and at this point, it is up to them. And everything that we've been saying all along is very much what Harry thinks, and we all were correct that at this point they have been holding the security against Harry, hoping that they would use that as a leverage against him to come back or to not have him and his family succeed out there in the world. And unless Harry gets this security, unfortunately, he will not be able to come back to England with his family because it's too unsafe. And at this point, Charles has cut off all communications with him. And it's just really sad that a father would go to this length to punish his own child. And Harry, as we've said, has been born a prince, and that does not the fact that he was born a prince gives him the right to have the security, and it should not, because he's no longer a working member of the royal family, that should not stop him from having security, because other people still have security even though they're not working officially in some official capacity that they used to work in. Take, for example, people who've worked in government positions in the United States. They end up retiring and having those security following them around until they expire. And Harry has mentioned that he's given at least 35 years to his government and to the royal family, and yet he still does not have those the same privileges or the same security that other people have, and it's a shame. It's incredible. He did say that what we were thinking about the bespoke security that they say that he has, that's a lie. He said the security that he has is two types. One where he's invited by the royal family, he gets the highest level of security, and one where he comes to do his charity work, or if he comes to see his family, it's something that is on a very, very low level. So it's a very powerful interview. I have the audio of it. It's on the BBC. You can go over there and listen to it. But due to copywriting issue, I'm not taking any chances for my channel to be flagged. I've decided to put the audio here for you so you can listen to it. But it's a must listen to. I will go into it a little bit more in more detail. I was trying to sort of like comment on it, but it was taking long and there was a lot of noise around me, so I couldn't do it. So I'm doing it that way, but I will go into it a little bit more detail a little later. I was on my lunch break trying to get this done, but it was near impossible with all the noise around me in this neighborhood, just very noisy. So guys, let me know what you think after listening to it, and I'll see you a little later. Take care and bye.
Welcome to BBC News. Now, in an exclusive interview with BBC News, Prince Harry has said he is devastated about losing his latest legal challenge over the security he receives when he's in the UK. The Duke of Sussex's taxpayer-funded protection was downgraded back in 2020 after he stopped being a working royal. Well, he appealed, arguing he was singled out for different, unjustified and inferior treatment. But 3 judges at the Court of Appeal today rejected that appeal. Well, now, following that judgment, he's told the BBC that it is currently impossible for him and his family to return to the UK. He's also said that because of the current situation, his father the King isn't speaking to him. Well, Prince Harry is currently living in California, where he's been speaking to our correspondent Neda Tawfik, and we can bring you that extended interview now.
Obviously, pretty gutted about the decision. We thought it was going to go our way, but it certainly has proven that there was no way to win this through the courts. Wish someone had told me that beforehand. Yeah, the decision has been a surprise as well as not a surprise. For the time being, it's impossible for me to take my family back to the UK safely.
You're obviously very deeply affected by this. What memories, experiences had you hoped your children, Archie and Lilibet, would have had that you think they won't be able to now with this decision?
Well, for a start, the only time that I've come back to the UK is sadly for funerals or court cases, with the odd charitable function where I can in between that. I put myself at risk for that, but I will continue on with a life of public service, so I will always support the charities and the people that mean so much to me. I can't see a world in which I would be bringing my wife and children back to the UK at this point. And the things that they're going to miss is, well, everything. You know, I love my country. I always have done, despite what some people in that country have done. So, you know, I miss the UK. I miss parts of the UK, of course I do. And I think that it's really quite sad that I won't be able to show, you know, my children my homeland. You know?
And as you say, you've gone back several times during this years-long battle. What about the security arrangements that were in place made you feel it would be unsafe for you and your family?
There's only so much that I can say because of the redaction process and the national security matters at hand, but everything. Because in beginning of 2020, I was scored the highest as far as risk was concerned, and then overnight I was reduced to the lowest without actually going through the risk management board. So one does question how that is even possible, and also the motive behind that at the time. And that was in 2020. And as hard as it is to appreciate or understand why the decision was made the way that it was in 2020, the hardest thing for me has been the fix of that decision for the last 5 years. The fact that I still haven't had a risk management board assessment done for me over the last 5 years. Everybody else within this group of people get it at the minimum once a year. So again, I would not have taken this far if I didn't have compelling evidence of facts that reveal why the decision was made. And I'm sitting here today talking to you, where, you know, we've lost the appeal, but the other side have won in keeping me unsafe. So again, there's a lot of question marks that a lot of people will have. I have all of the truth. I have all of the knowledge now throughout the legal process. I've uncovered my worst fears. And to now know today, based on this judgment, that there was no legal framework that constrains the decisions of this body, RAVEC, of which the royal household sit on. And I didn't know that until this legal process in 2021. One of the first things my lawyer said to me was, as disclosure started, or as this process started, she turned around and said, "Did you know that the royal household sat on RAVEC?" And my jaw hit the floor.
Well, I want to ask you about that, because the King's private secretary sits on RAVEC now.
Sir Clive Alderton, yeah.
Do you wish your father...
And another person as well, but yes.
Do you wish your father had intervened, despite how that may have looked?
I've never asked him to intervene. I've asked him to step out of the way and let the experts do their job. This RAVEC committee is an expert committee full of professionals, plus the royal household. and the royal household don't have any role in that, on the Rabbit Committee, other than the helping influence the decisions based on members of the royal family. And 5 years later, every single visit that I do back to the UK has to go through the royal household. My representative on the Rabbit Committee, still to this day, is the royal household. That is not a decision that I choose. I am forced to go through the royal household and accept that they are putting my best interests forward during these conversations and the deliberations. So no, I haven't asked my father to intervene. The whole point of a risk management board, which, as I said, everybody else gets, but I haven't, never been given since back end of 2019 was the last one that I was given. The whole point of that is to have a board and a risk assessment, a separate board from RAVEC, that considers all of the facts and all the circumstances. It is a system and an assessment that is designed to be non-biased and to avoid interference. What I know throughout this legal process is the interference that was created came from the royal household. And the RAVEC chair at the time, who I believe I can talk about because he's no longer there, Sir Richard Mottram, the first thing he did, well, the first people that he went to go and see was the royal household at the palace. So whether it's the media or whether it's anybody else that claims that the royal household and my father and my family don't have any decision-making capabilities on RAVEC, well then what's their role? They're not experts. What's their role on that? And Sir Richard Mottram emailed back in January of 2020 that an RMB would be necessary before taking my security away. After his visit to the palace, that RMB that was planned was abandoned in favour of alternative governance measures.
What the court decided today was that they were justified for 4 reasons to not have that review. And a major part of that is because you're no longer a working royal, a change in your status. Do you not accept that from the court?
Well, my status hasn't changed. It can't change. I am who I am. I am part of what I'm part of, and I can never escape that. My circumstances will always be the same. But with a specific answer to the question, there are comparisons that exist. And again, I have to be careful what I say, but I think it would be quite shocking for the British public and the public at large to understand or know that, in fact many people do know this, that people who leave public office receive lifetime protection, regardless of whether there are threats or risks to them. So for me, with a whole list of risks and threats that were known about in 2020 and that have only increased over time, including the Al-Qaeda threat that was published and talked about recently, completely disregarded, thrown away, ignored, because for me, security was made conditional on having that official role. That role that everybody knows, that myself and my wife wished to carry on, but was stopped from being able to do that back in 2020.
What do you say to those who ask, why should the taxpayer pay for your police security if you have your own private security? Where are the gaps there? What's your response to those who say you're getting police protection on a case-by-case basis?
I tell you what, why don't you ask that question again, but in 3 parts, if you could? Because you've just put 3 very, very important questions together.
Sure.
And I can't possibly answer all 3 of them at the same time.
Sure. What do you say to those who ask why the UK taxpayer should pay for police security? You have your own private security.
Well, first off, private security can only do so much. Again, I can't go into the details of that, but I think most people will be able to work that out. One of the major things is they don't have jurisdiction in a foreign country, or in any country. They don't have any jurisdiction. Police protection is effective protection, which is what my grandmother made very clear that we needed. With regard to the taxpayer part of it, I don't need to go into detail of how much, the royal family costs or how much protection costs or whatever. What I will say is that some of the British tabloid press did a very good job in campaigning to have our security removed by quoting figures such as £20 million. Right, and through this disclosure process, I've seen constituents in the UK write to their MP saying, as a taxpayer, I don't want to pay for Meghan and Harry's security at this cost. They're literally quoting headlines from British newspapers. Those figures are obviously grossly exaggerated by about 18, 19 times. And further to that, if you know that other people are being protected, people that have made a choice for public office, then why wouldn't you be comfortable, happy with someone in my position who's given 35 years service to his country, 2 tours of Afghanistan, and the threats and risks to my life? I was born into this position. I was born into those risks, and they've only increased over time, along with my marriage to Meghan, and the frenzy across media, mainstream media and social media that created. So, and I guess on top of that as well, probably what people don't know, but that is mentioned in the judgment today, RAVEC protect private citizens. I was made a private citizen by the royal household, not by RAVEC, by the royal household. I can't be a private citizen. I will never be seen as a private citizen. I will never be treated as a private citizen, not by the media, not by most people, and certainly not by anybody that wants to harm me or my wife or our kids. So I think once people realize or understand that there are private citizens who have never played any role in public office and never will play any public role, that because they are high risk, they are protected at taxpayers' expense, and rightly so, because it will affect not only with that person, could they end up in hospital or worse on UK soil, but it comes down to impact, and it comes down to the reputational impact of the UK if that person or those people are injured on UK soil. But apparently for me, that doesn't matter.
And just to be absolutely clear, what is the difference between the top level security you say you should have and the security you are given on this case-by-case basis when you go to
the details of the security I can't talk about. All I will say is that the last R&B assessment that I was given, I scored the highest. The only person within the family that scored anywhere near that was my grandmother. Overnight, I was reduced to the lowest. This case-by-case basis has been used by RAVEC and also by large sections of the British press to say, well, what's the big problem? You're given something on a case-by-case basis. Unfortunately, that case-by-case basis is separated by the reason for my visit. Sorry, just to give you more context on that. It's not really a case-by-case basis. It's an either-or. If you're invited to the UK by your family, then we will give you security. If you come for any other reason, then you will get a very low amount of security. I'm not going to confirm what that is, but it is completely insufficient. Somewhere along the line, people have talked about the fact that all it is someone on the end of a phone. So, no matter how much private security I have around me, there's only so much that I can do and operate and function within the UK when it comes to supporting my charities, visiting my friends, all of these things. So, I've been treated very, very, very differently to everybody else that exists. All examples that exist, past, present, I have been singled out.
You've spoken very openly about the fact that you think you've been punished for leaving the monarchy. Who specifically do you think is trying to punish you?
I don't think that anymore. Now I know that it was, security was used as leverage. And I think what really worries me more than anything else about today's decision, depending on what happens next, is that it's set a new precedent that security can be used to control members of the family. And effectively what it does is imprison other members of the family from being able to, choose a different life. If for me, security is conditional on having an official role, one that both myself and my wife wished to carry on, but then was rejected, not by Ravek, was rejected by the royal household, and the result to that is you lose your security. That basically says that you can't live outside of their control if you want to be safe. But there's a pretty hard decision there, and I think if you strip away all the noise of everything that's been said by other people and all the noise that's been created around this, if you strip that all away, I think what people will hear is that the only thing that I've been asking for throughout this whole process is safety, both when I was when I was part of the institution and when we left. And the important piece here, Neda, is, for me and my wife, well, I mean, again, I'm not sure how much I can say, but well, I can never leave the royal family. Yeah, that is my family. That is my larger family. I left the institution because at the end of the day I had to. I didn't leave it in 2020. I left it in 2021. But security was removed in 2020.
Speaking of your family, your father is ill with cancer. Will you continue to visit him alone without the family? Where does this leave things moving forward, the ability of your children to see their grandfather?
Life is a precious thing, and I'm acutely aware of the fragility of that. I can only come to the UK safely if I'm invited. And there is a lot of control and ability in my father's hands. Ultimately, this whole thing could be resolved through him, not necessarily by intervening, but by stepping aside, allowing the experts to do what is necessary and to carry out an RMB. That said, this all was initiated under a previous government. There is now a new government. I have had it described to me, once people knew about the facts, that this is an good old-fashioned establishment stitch-up, and that's what it feels like.
So should Keir Starmer step in?
I think that, based on the judgment that the court has put out today, it clearly states that Ravek aren't constrained by law. Again, I wish somebody had said that from the beginning. If they're not constrained by law, then this decision was made by the royal prerogative, which means that on national security matters, my case, which the other side have used national security exclusions and excuses to withhold certain information from me, restrict me from being able to speak about certain things to the public, that this national security matter is not bound by any law, and that Ravek can abandon the very processes, the very expert processes that exist to protect individuals and the people around them, as well as the decision makers themselves, from liability if anything should happen. So, I would ask the Prime Minister to step in. I would ask Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, to look at this very, very carefully, and I would ask her to review Ravek and its members, because if it is an expert body, then what is the royal household's role there? If it isn't to influence and decide what they want for the members of their household.
Do you want the court battle to continue? Do you want to try to see this get to the Supreme Court?
I don't want any battles to continue. There is way too much suffering and way too much conflict in the world. At the heart of it is a family dispute. And it makes me really, really sad that we're sitting here today, 5 years later, where a decision that was made, most likely, in fact I know, to keep us under the roof. But then once they realised that wasn't going to work, once they realised that, myself, my wife and our kids are happier outside of the institution, then please just look at the facts. Look at the risks, look at the threat, look at the impact that if anything was to happen to me, my wife, or my father's grandchildren, if anything was to happen to them, look where the responsibility lies. You know, so there's a duty of care that has been completely thrown out the window, and that doesn't feel great. Whether we agree or disagree, and there's a lot that we agree on, there's a lot that we disagree on. But that aside, where is the duty of care? Because, as I said, life is precious, and it is very clear that from 2020, because I was no longer allowed an official role, and because I decided to remove myself eventually from the institution, that my life got devalued from the highest score to the lowest score overnight.
And how does that make you feel, given you have expressed numerous times that you do not want history to repeat itself?
I don't want history to repeat itself. I think there's a lot of other people out there, the majority, that also don't want history to repeat itself. Through the disclosure process, I've discovered that some people want history to repeat itself, which is pretty dark.
That's quite a statement. Who do you think that is?
I'm not going to share it at this point. You know, I know all the names of the people that were involved in this process, and again, you have to question, why wasn't I put through the same risk management board that everybody else was put through, including members of my family?
And you reject it not because you're no longer a working royal.
Sorry?
And you reject that it has nothing to do with the fact that you're no longer a working royal.
Whether I have an official role or not is irrelevant to the security needs that I would need. Let me rephrase that. Whether I have an official role or not is irrelevant to the threats, risks, and impact on the reputation of the UK if something was to happen. And again, that is proven by all of the examples that exist out there. So for me, having an official role was conditional on keeping security. But for everybody else, people who have chosen this life to enter into public office and then leave, get it for life, regardless of whether they have risk or threat to their name. And by the way, I agree with that. I think that is absolutely the right thing to do. That if you come in and you serve your country, even if it's a minimum of 4 years, that you get the protection that you require because of your public service. I was born into this position. It wasn't a choice. I've served my country for 35 years. I believe that I am still continuing to serve my country. Public service is my life. That is the dedication that will never change. And then all the other bits and pieces that are added to that. There are very, very real threats that exist out there. Some that are known about, some that are being withheld. And for people in power and responsibility of decisions to know that those threats and risks exist, but to turn around and say, well, because you don't have an official role, your life doesn't actually matter anymore. Well, you can imagine how I feel about that, but you can also imagine, not even imagine, that is the most illogical argument in the history of arguments.
And finally, just because you mentioned, your connection to your country, your public service, after this years-long battle, do you think your relationship has changed with the UK? Do you feel let down by your country?
That's a big question. At this point, I'm feeling very let down. It's the minority of people, especially those that read the tabloids and the press themselves. The press themselves have incited so much hatred towards myself, my wife, and even our children. That's hard to forgive. There are decisions that have been made. There are things that have happened since 2016, especially throughout my whole life. But let's just stick since 2016. There are things that have happened that I can now forgive. I've moved past that. I can forgive my family's involvement, my father's, my brother, and my stepmother. I can forgive the press to a large extent as well for so many things that have happened. What I'm struggling to forgive, and what I will probably always struggle to forgive, is that a decision that was made in 2020 that affects my every single day, and that is knowingly putting me and my family in harm's way. Everybody knew that they were putting us at risk in 2020, and they hoped that me knowing that risk would force us to come back. But then when you realise that that didn't work, do you not want to just keep us safe? Whether you're the government, whether you're the royal household, whether you're my dad, my family, despite all of our differences, do you not want to just ensure our safety? And I'm calling for, the Home Secretary and the government to do a review of RAVEC. And I'm also asking for an R&B assessment that I haven't received since 2019.
Just because you spoke there about forgiveness, it sounds like the last step to repairing relations with your family is the security issue, by what you said there.
100%. Whatever noise has been created, whatever stories have been written, this has always been the sticking point. And put yourself in my shoes. If you step back to try to create a different role, the same official role, but a different working relationship with the institution that you were born into, for the sake of your wife and your own mental health and your child, which now, of course, a lot more has come out because I felt as though it needed to come out. The other side of the story needed to be told. God forbid anything should happen. And I don't regret that at all. But 2020, when that decision happened, I couldn't believe it. I actually couldn't believe it. I thought, with all the disagreements and all of the chaos that's happening, the one thing that I could rely on is my family keeping me safe. And not only did they decide to remove my security in the UK, but they also signalled to every single government around the world not to protect us.
How are you feeling about this decision? Because clearly you have 2 children, Archie, Lilibet. They're not able to see their grandfather, their uncle, their cousins, in a way that you feel is safe for them. So what's your feelings kind of moving forward? Is there any way that this could be resolved?
Firstly, I'm devastated. Not so much as devastated as with the loss that I am about the people behind the decision, feeling as though this is okay. Is it a win for them? Is it a win that that I don't get the protection that the threats and risks and impact say that I should? I would hope they wouldn't consider it a win. And I'm sure there's some people out there, probably the most likely the people that wish me harm, consider this a huge win. But there have been so many disagreements, differences between me and some of my family. This current situation that has been ongoing for 5 years with regard to human life and safety is the sticking point. It is the only thing that's left. Of course, some members of my family will never forgive me for writing a book. Of course, they will never forgive me for lots of things. But there is. I would love reconciliation with my family. There's no point in continuing to fight anymore. As I said, life is precious. I don't know how much longer my father has. He won't speak to me because of this security stuff. But it would be nice to reconcile. As I learned through the First Nations throughout Canada, because of the Invictus Games, their goal in life was always truth and reconciliation. And I turned around to them in many conversations and I said, right, but reconciliation can't come without truth. Well, I've now found out the truth. I've shared some of it with you today. A lot of it exists out there, whether people choose to ignore it or not. So it would be nice to have that reconciliation part now. If they don't want that, that's entirely up to them.
And now that this court battle is over, do you feel you will be able to approach your father and speak about some of those issues?
I mean, no, I don't think he would ever want to talk about it. I think he would just push it aside, and the argument will continue to be this is a government decision. It may well be a government decision, but how did they reach that decision? When the Rabbit chair, the first place that they went to was the palace to understand what it is that the royal household or what the royal family want for me. I've never ever been allowed or offered to make my own representations. Not in 2020 and not for the last 5 years. And the new Rabbit chair continues to avoid answering some very specific questions that I have. And one of your previous questions that I think is really important is this case-by-case basis. For me, and only me, there has to be a royal obligation in order to receive protection on UK soil. And I think that speaks volumes.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Anita of My Duke and I podcast, and I'm bringing you an interview that Prince Harry did with the BBC on the result of his appeal court case with against Ravik, and it's an explosive interview, and Harry is pointing a finger at his father and the royal household. They're the ones that are preventing him from obtaining the security, and at this point, it is up to them. And everything that we've been saying all along is very much what Harry thinks, and we all were correct that at this point they have been holding the security against Harry, hoping that they would use that as a leverage against him to come back or to not have him and his family succeed out there in the world. And unless Harry gets this security, unfortunately, he will not be able to come back to England with his family because it's too unsafe. And at this point, Charles has cut off all communications with him. And it's just really sad that a father would go to this length to punish his own child. And Harry, as we've said, has been born a prince, and that does not the fact that he was born a prince gives him the right to have the security, and it should not, because he's no longer a working member of the royal family, that should not stop him from having security, because other people still have security even though they're not working officially in some official capacity that they used to work in. Take, for example, people who've worked in government positions in the United States. They end up retiring and having those security following them around until they expire. And Harry has mentioned that he's given at least 35 years to his government and to the royal family, and yet he still does not have those the same privileges or the same security that other people have. And it's a shame. It's incredible. He did say that what we were thinking about the bespoke security that they say that he has, that's a lie. He said the security that he has is two types. One where he is invited by the royal family, he gets the highest level of security, and one where he comes to do his charity work, or if he comes to see his family, it's something that is on a very, very low level. So it's a very powerful interview. I have the audio of it. It's on the BBC. You can go over there and listen to it. But due to copywriting issue, I'm not taking any chances for my channel to be flagged. I've decided to put the audio here for you so you can listen to it. But it's a must listen to. I will go into it a little bit more in more detail. I was trying to sort of like comment on it, but it was taking long and there was a lot of noise around me, so I couldn't do it. So I'm doing it that way, but I will go into it a little bit more detail a little later. I was on my lunch break trying to get this done, but it was near impossible with all the noise around me in this neighborhood. Just no, very noisy. So, guys, let me know what you think after listening to it, and I'll see you a little later. Take care and bye.